Real estate gurus are deliberately setting you up for financial suicide. They feed you zero-down fantasies while hiding a dark, heavily guarded secret that will eventually bankrupt your family. I'm exposing the brutal, unapologetic blueprint to generational wealth. Watch until the absolute end, if you can stomach the terrifying truth. There is a dark, heavily guarded secret in the wealth creation industry. A silent truth that the charismatic gurus in rented sports cars will never, ever whisper in your ear. They want you addicted to the delusion of overnight success, chasing zero-down payment fantasies while you bleed out in invisible debt, hoping you never realize that their entire business model relies on your perpetual ignorance. But what if I told you that the actual blueprint to generational wealth isn't a magical hack you can master in 3 months, but a calculated, almost ruthless war of attrition? Money Glow Up 02 welcomes you, ladies and gentlemen, to the stripping away of your financial illusions. If you are brave enough to face the raw, unpolished reality of building a true freedom fund and want to arm yourself for the battle ahead, hit that subscribe button right now to fuel this channel so we can continue bringing you the unapologetic truth you desperately need. The internet loves to sell you the 3% or zero down lie. It sounds intoxicating, doesn't it? Free houses, infinite leverage, a shortcut to the top. But I need you to understand that stepping into the real estate arena without a substantial shield is financial suicide the moment the market violently shifts. You are not just buying a property, you are buying a fortress, and a fortress requires a margin of safety. I demand that you aim for a 15 to 20% down payment for your investments. A heavy down payment suffocates the principal balance, forces your cash flow into the green from the very first day, and prevents your hard-earned capital from decaying as lazy money in a savings account, slowly being devoured by the silent thief of inflation. You must gather your capital, apply ironclad discipline, and forge those dollars into relentless soldiers that march out and capture territory for your family's future. But having cash is only a fraction of the battle, because the banking system operates as a cold, algorithmic machine. They do not care about your dreams, your smile, or your excuses. They judge the entirety of your financial soul based on 3 digits, your credit score. When I see people with scores bleeding below a 680 because they prioritized a financed iPhone or swiped their way through meaningless weekend drinks, it physically hurts me. You are voluntarily shooting yourself in the foot. You must become obsessed with crossing the 740 threshold. A mere 1% difference in an interest rate over a 30-year mortgage is not just a negligible number. It is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is your child's college tuition. It is your early retirement. It is the lifeblood in your financial veins. Pay off those toxic credit card balances entirely every single month and transform yourself into an entity that banks desperately beg to lend to. And then comes the ultimate paradox, the painful trade-off that leaves so many clever entrepreneurs stranded outside the gates of wealth. It is the game of tax returns. I have sat across from countless self-employed hustlers who proudly boast about writing off every conceivable expense, pushing their net income to a ghostly zero to legally evade the taxman. It is a brilliant short-term survival tactic, but it is absolute monumental stupidity when you walk into a bank asking for a mortgage. The underwriters will look at your tax returns from the last 2 years, see a pauper on paper, and laugh you out of the building without handing you a single dime. To win this war, you must endure a tactical retreat. For 2 years before you buy real estate, you have to swallow your pride, drastically reduce those write-offs, and willingly pay the government their pound of flesh. You have to paint a picture of immense, stable, and high net income. You are sacrificing a fraction of your capital to taxes to prove your financial fortitude, taking one agonizing step backward to catapult 3 giant leaps forward into an empire of your own making. Once you have bled for that down payment, weaponized your credit score, and laid your financial soul bare for the banks, you are ready to step onto the battlefield of the physical market. The greatest trap waiting for you out there is the seductive illusion of the hot market, a manufactured frenzy designed by developers and charismatic agents to separate fools from their capital. You see them on social media, pointing at sleek high-rises in transient tech hubs or sun-drenched vacation towns, promising massive appreciation while entirely ignoring the terrifying vulnerability of negative cash flow. Let me be brutally honest with you. Hoping for market appreciation to save a bad deal is not investing. It is gambling with your family's future on an unpredictable roulette wheel. True wealth is not forged in the glitzy, oversaturated zip codes where everyone is clamoring to live. It is built in the shadows, in the thoroughly unsexy, boring, blue-collar neighborhoods where the working class anchors the local economy. You must train your eyes to look past the superficial aesthetic of a street and see the underlying economic engines. Look for areas anchored by hospitals, universities, and established logistical hubs. Institutions that do not simply pack up and leave when a recession hits. You are hunting for stability, for places where the rent checks clear every single month because the jobs are resilient. The amateur buys a property because the kitchen has quartz countertops and it feels like a nice place to host a weekend barbecue. The veteran buys a property because the neighborhood has a 70% owner occupancy rate. The local school district just secured a decade of funding, and the infrastructure is quietly receiving municipal upgrades. You have to divorce your personal tastes from your investment criteria entirely. It does not matter if the siding is an ugly shade of brown or if the carpets smell like stale cigarettes when you walk in. Those are merely cosmetic illusions that terrify the weak-stomached retail buyer and create a massive discount for the seasoned operator. Too many rookies try to play the dangerous game of predicting gentrification, buying in absolute war zones with the naive hope that a hipster coffee shop will magically appear and double their property value overnight. That is a loser's wager born of desperation. You do not have the institutional billions required to force neighborhood appreciation. Instead, you must ride the reliable, slow-moving currents of established communities. You are buying the dirt, the neighborhood trajectory, and the unyielding math of the local rental demand. If you cannot detach your personal emotions and look at a physical home as a pure, calculating vessel for cash flow, the market will eventually chew you up and spit you out completely empty-handed. But knowing where to plant your flag means absolutely nothing if you cannot clinically dissect the anatomy of the properties within that territory. The moment you walk through the front door of a potential investment, you must flip a switch in your brain that brutally murders all optimism and replaces it with relentless, borderline paranoid skepticism. Most people look at a house and see unlimited potential. I need you to look at a house and see every single way it can bankrupt you. The prepackaged spreadsheets that gurus sell you are utterly useless because they operate in a sterile vacuum, assuming absolute perfection. They casually leave out the brutal, inevitable realities of capital expenditures. A roof is not just a structural covering. It is a $15,000 ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. An ancient HVAC system in the basement is not just an inconvenience. It is a midnight emergency call that will evaporate 6 months of your hard-earned cash flow in a matter of hours. You have to underwrite your deals with a terrifying pessimism that leaves no room for hope. When you calculate your expenses, you must aggressively factor in high vacancy rates, robust maintenance reserves, and property management fees. even if you arrogantly plan on managing it yourself. If the property cannot survive the stress test of your most catastrophic financial projections and still produce a net positive yield, it is dead to you. You do not force the math to work just because you are exhausted from looking at dozens of houses over 6 months. That mental exhaustion is exactly what sellers and real estate agents prey upon. They want you fatigued. They want you desperate to finally close a deal so you can stroke your own ego and feel like a real investor. You must resist that urge with every fiber of your being. The most powerful muscle an investor possesses is the ability to turn their back and walk away from a mediocre deal without a flinch. There is no scarcity of real estate. There is only a catastrophic scarcity of patience among buyers. You are searching for the distressed seller, the exhausted landlord, the messy estate sale where the heirs just want immediate cash. You are looking to solve a painful, agonizing problem for someone else in exchange for massive, immediate equity. If you are buying a shiny, turnkey property off the multiple listing service at full retail price, you are already losing the game before you even begin. When you finally locate that mathematical anomaly, that rare diamond buried in the dirt, you must instantly pivot from a cold analyst into a psychological predator at the negotiating table. Do not ever mistake a real estate agent for your friend, your trusted mentor, or your savior. Their ultimate allegiance is to the transaction itself, driven by the primal survivalist need to secure a commission, and they will subconsciously push you to compromise just to ensure the deal crosses the finish line. You must become an impenetrable wall of logic, entirely immune to their manufactured urgency, their dramatic size, and their artificial bidding wars. The inspection report is not merely a checklist of minor inconveniences. It is your ultimate weapon of leverage. When that inspector hands you a 30-page document detailing every leaking pipe, every foundational crack, and every frayed electrical wire, you do not panic. You smile. That document is the pure, unfiltered ammunition you will use to violently strip away the seller's asking price. You go back to the table and you mercilessly demand concessions, brutal price reductions, or massive seller credits to cover the risk. This is where the weak fold and the wealthy conquer. Most amateurs are so terrified of losing the house that they swallow the repair costs, essentially paying premium retail price for a broken, bleeding asset. They let their fragile ego dictate the negotiation, wanting to be liked by the seller, wanting to be perceived as the easy, agreeable buyer. You cannot afford to care if the seller likes you. You are not there to make friends or win popularity contests. You are there to protect your family's capital and extract maximum value from the transaction. If they refuse to budge on a fundamentally compromised property, you must exercise that absolute power we discussed earlier and let the deal collapse without a single second thought. The genuine willingness to let it all burn down gives you total, undeniable control over the room. Negotiation is a dark, uncomfortable art of silence, immense patience, and reading the subtle panic in the other party's voice. You make your initial offer based strictly on your unforgiving math, and you let the heavy silence hang in the air until it becomes physically painful for them. Let them sweat. Let them rationalize against themselves. You hold your ground until the terms align perfectly with the generational fortress you are trying to build. Yet, getting the keys handed to you at closing is not the finish line. It is merely the violent birth of your new reality as an empire builder. The internet gurus conveniently fade to black right after the closing table, popping expensive champagne and posing with the deed, completely shielding you from the grueling, unglamorous trench warfare of actual property management. Let me warn you right now. Being a landlord is an abrasive, often disheartening study in human nature. Tenants will look you dead in the eye and lie to your face. Toilets will violently overflow right in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, and the local municipality will suddenly invent new, absurd compliance taxes just to bleed your profit margins dry. You must ruthlessly separate your empathy from your business operations, treating your portfolio as a cold, calculating corporation rather than a neighborhood charity. When a tenant is late on rent, you do not listen to their tragic, convoluted stories. You post the eviction notice on the exact day the law allows, executing your standard operating procedures with mechanical, emotionless precision. If you give them an inch, they will devour your entire livelihood and sleep soundly while doing it. As your monthly cash flow slowly accumulates, the temptation to rapidly scale will become intoxicating. You will want to leverage the equity in your first property to aggressively buy 3 more, playing a dangerous, highly leveraged game of financial Jenga. I implore you to resist the toxic addiction of rapid expansion. Over-leverage is the silent, grinning assassin of real estate empires, entirely wiping out aggressive investors the moment credit markets inevitably freeze, or a black swan economic event sweeps across the globe. You build truly bulletproof generational wealth through a slow, deliberate, almost agonizingly boring accumulation of assets over decades. You let the tenants slowly pay down your mortgages while you hoard cash reserves like a doomsday prepper bracing for the end of the world. True financial freedom is not owning 50 highly leveraged doors that keep you awake in a cold sweat every night, wondering if you can cover the debt service. True freedom is owning 5 to 10 properties free and clear, producing a raging river of unencumbered cash that no bank, no market crash, and no economic downturn can ever take away from you. That is the ultimate final destination. It requires decades of unrelenting discipline, an iron stomach for human conflict, and a profound willingness to endure the harsh judgment of a society that demands instant gratification. You are no longer playing for the weekend. You are playing for the absolute financial sovereignty of your bloodline. Real estate investing is fundamentally a ruthless, unglamorous battlefield where survival dictates success, not aesthetics or naive optimism. The journey requires a complete psychological transformation from a hopeful consumer into a cold, calculating empire builder. First, you must abandon the seductive illusions of hot markets and unpredictable gentrification, choosing instead to anchor your capital in stable, working-class neighborhoods where economic fundamentals, not trendy coffee shops, ensure consistent, reliable rental demand. Second, you must adopt a clinical, deeply pessimistic mindset when analyzing deals. Every property is a massive liability waiting to bankrupt you unless your severely stress-tested math proves otherwise. The ability to walk away from a mediocre deal without flinching is your ultimate superpower in an industry that continuously preys on buyer fatigue and impatience. Furthermore, the negotiation table is an unforgiving arena of psychological warfare, where strict logic must entirely override the human desire to be liked. You must leverage inspections mercilessly and hold your ground in painful silence to extract maximum equity. Finally, securing the property is merely the violent birth of your real work: property management. It demands strict, emotionless operational boundaries and an iron stomach for human conflict. True generational wealth is never built through reckless over-leverage or the intoxicating addiction of rapid scaling. It is forged through the agonizingly slow, deliberate accumulation of free and clear assets. It is a decades-long game of unyielding discipline, resilience, and emotional detachment, culminating in the ultimate final destination: absolute financial sovereignty that no economic collapse can ever destroy. Emotion is the ultimate destroyer of wealth. Whether it is the desire for an aesthetically pleasing property, the fear of missing out on a deal, the need to be liked by a seller, or unchecked empathy for a defaulting tenant, feelings will inevitably cloud your judgment and bleed your capital dry. True financial sovereignty is achieved only when you completely divorce your personal emotions from your investments, treating every asset, negotiation, and interaction as a pure, uncompromising mathematical equation. Start by auditing your current financial decisions and mercilessly stripping away the emotion. If you are looking to buy a house, a car, or make any significant investment, force yourself to write down the absolute worst-case scenario. Stress test your budget against sudden job loss, massive, unexpected repair bills, and deep economic downturns. If the math does not survive the stress test, kill the deal. Practice the power of walking away in your daily negotiations, whether you are dealing with a contractor, a salesperson, or buying a used item. Cultivate the discipline to say no to instant gratification and superficial lifestyle upgrades, opting instead to hoard cash reserves and build a quiet, unshakable financial fortress behind the scenes. Treat your household finances like a cold, calculating business. Have you ever made a financial decision based purely on emotion that you later regretted? Or do you always stick strictly to the math? Please drop your answer in the comments below. We would love to read your perspective and create a space where everyone can learn from each other's experiences. If you found this breakdown valuable, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel. It gives us the motivation to keep delivering powerful, no-nonsense content just like this.